Today I'm going to show you how to put a background in over an image you've already stamped and colored. Here is a digitally stamped image, and I colored it with my Pro markers, but I really don't like this white background. So I'm going to show you how you can use a traditional rubber stamp and some clear ink and some decorator's chalk to color a background without messing up your image here. Now traditionally, if you were rubber stamping, you would use a mask, which is when you stamp the same image on like a sticky note, a post-it note, and then you cut it out and you place it over, and then you can stamp all around it. But that takes a little more time than I want to spend, and since I've already printed this and colored it, I didn't print it twice. I'd have to go in and open the file and do all that work. I just didn't want to bother with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm inking up a wheel stamp with just clear embossing ink, just a regular old embossing ink pad, and I'm going to roll over my image. I just have a couple sheets of paper underneath it to protect my work surface. You want to make sure your stamp is clean before you start this so you don't end up with any color you don't want on there. And then what you want to do is simply take some chalk. I'm going to use some pinks and some purples and just rub it on your background, and you'll see the design magically appear. It's very quick. And if you do make a mistake and you get it on your image, you can always just go in with a little eraser and take it away. I like those kneaded erasers that are kind of made out of gray. It almost looks like clay, and then you can like mold them into a fine tip and get into any little nooks and crannies that you might need to. But with a color like pink, I'm going right over purple. Even if it did go where I didn't want it to, you wouldn't really notice it too much. And I like this because you can add a couple colors. I can go in with a little purple around the edges just to darken it up a little bit. And I can blend my colors pretty well with this. And you just can do that with a regular ink pad without much control. You can also use this darker pink. I'm using chalk by Pebbles, but any chalk will work. Any chalk pastel. I even use my artist chalk sometimes because I have those out and at the ready most of the time. But this little palette's really handy to have, and that fits on my desk really well, so that's why I'm using that today. It's really fun to see the image appear right before your eyes like this. And you can use a wood-mounted stamp. It doesn't have to be a stamp wheel. If you have a large background stamp or even some small little background fillers, you can use those too. Those will work just as well. More purple around the edge. Now, I often hear some really great stamping tips from the ladies over at Split Coast Stampers and different stamping groups I'm a part of. And a woman over on Split Coast Stampers shared the most amazing tip with me the other day. And she said that instead of buying a stamp positioner, she made one out of Legos. And I thought, why didn't I think of that? I bought a stamp positioner, but I got it at a yard sale for a couple dollars, so it wasn't very expensive. It's a stamp-a-majig. You've probably seen these. They come with a little plastic sheet. And the way you use them is you line up the sheet up into the little corner here, and you would stamp with your stamp, holding your stamp right in the corner. So when this lady said she made one out of Legos, I immediately had to go to my son's Lego kit and make a little L-shaped corner out of Legos. And then you can just take a piece of plastic, a transparency, a piece of vellum. You could even cut a square out of a frosted milk jug. So you slide that in the corner. I'll hold it to the camera so you can see. And then what you'd want to do is just stamp. And for those who haven't used a stamp positioner before, this I'm going through these steps. And you just stamp straight down with the stamp right in the corner like that. And see how it doesn't move? It's going to be right where you want it. And since I don't have very much space to work with on this card, and I wanted to have a thank you so very much sent to me, I decided I'd better use a stamp positioner because I only have one chance. I wouldn't want to ruin it right when it's so close to being done. So then you lay your sheet on top of your card where you want to stamp it. Now this is what makes this so cool, is that you take either your real positioner or your homemade one, and you line up your image that you've just stamped on the clear sheet, and then you line up the corner right up against the clear sheet you just stamped. Alright, then you want to remove the sheet without removing your positioner, and you want to hold it nice and tight. Ink up your stamp again, and then you want to stamp straight down. So when I pull this up, it should be right in the corner where I want it. Yeah, look at that. Isn't that cute? I used pigment ink there, so it's going to take a second to dry. I have prepared a little background panel that I'm going to stick this on. I'll just be careful not to, oh, I probably ought to get some adhesive for that. I got a little in the center, that should hold it all right. And I made a little button, just like I did the other day on our video, and I'm going to put that right in the center to give it a little dimension. I decided I wanted the knot on the back. Nice 3D. I got a little hot glue on the front, but I can pick that off in a minute. Alright, now I have a plain white card. I mean, that would be pretty like that, but I think it just needs a little something else. So what I'm going to do is use my stamp wheel again, but this time I'm going to use it on a rainbow ink pad. Now, these are some of my favorite inks. It's Kaleidocolor, and this is the Berry Blaze colors. And when you buy the ink, you'll notice that there's this little tab here. If you push it together, your inks go together. Now, when you go to store this ink pad, make sure you have them pulled apart. Otherwise, your colors are going to migrate, and you're not going to have that nice, those nice individual colors. Because this is basically like 5 ink pads. You could use like little alphabet stamps and get 5 different colors, or you could push it together and use a brayer, or use a wheel stamp like I'm going to here. Now, I know they make ink cartridges for these wheels, but I find them very limiting, and honestly, I get just as much good use out of using an ink pad. And here we're going to do a little blending ink. So what I'm going to do to start off is I'm going to start with my lighter colors. I'm going straight across because I don't want to blend my colors into one another on the ink pad. I want to keep my colors nice and fresh on the ink pad. You have to roll over it a few times to get your stamp inked up, and then just kind of give it a peek and see how inked it looks. Mine, it doesn't look like it's inked up all the way. And when I'm going to use color, I like to use a wheel guide. I have the little Stampin' Up! One, but you know, you could find something that would work just as well. A thick ruler or a thin piece of wood or something would work just as well as this, but this wasn't too expensive, and I do find it's very handy. And then I like to stand up when I work, and I line the edge of my wheel up to that guide, and I just stamp across. Now I got the pink to the top and the purple in the middle. So I'm going to switch my ink pad around, so I'm inking it up the opposite way. And I'm going to try to make those colors kind of meet where they were, so I end up getting a nice blend. So this time I'm going to end up with purple. I'm just going to roll it off a little bit so I don't contaminate my colors. It's always good to take a peek at your stamp to make sure it's all shiny and inked up. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to make sure that I have this lined up properly. This is a little backwards, but I'm going to, it's hard to do this in front of the camera. I'm going to line it up and roll it back towards myself here. So see how I get a nice variegated color there? I'm going to put my positioner back down there, and I'm going to ink my stamp up again. I'm just going to kind of roll it off a little bit so I don't accidentally contaminate it. Go right next to that. Just eyeball it a bit. And maybe I'll finish it up with a little more purple. So I'm just going to creep my ink pad down, my little wheel down on the ink pad a little bit, so I'm getting into more of the purples. Again, I'm trying not to contaminate my ink pad, and you can see that's nice and well inked. And I am going to bring my guide down again, and there we go. And then I can just simply add that right on top and have a cute little card. Okay, let's take a look at the stamped card base that we just stamped and see how that's going to go on there. It's pretty, it's nice and bright. It would be a very cheerful card to send somebody. Now I want to show you how I store my wheel stamps. Now it's Girl Scout cookie time in my neck of the woods, and so we end up with a lot of these little trays. And instead of just sticking them out in the recycling bin, they're very handy to store our wheel stamps. The thing I really like about this is that they stay upright and I can see all my patterns.